Put the ball down.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino. On today's episode, we're breaking down the Buffalo Bills 2026 schedule. It's finally here. The path forward for the Bills in 2026 has been laid out, and I'm excited to break it down for you today from so many different angles. And I want to start by examining the opener and the opening stretch. And the Bills kick off the 2026 season in Houston to face the Texans at 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. And that's obviously a tough opening game. The Bills have had their challenges playing against Houston. The offense has struggled consistently against Houston. And this is a tough way to get things started, right? Joe Brady's debut as a head coach had one of his worst game plans of his career last year in Houston. Very interested to see what they look like in that opening game. I think there are some redeeming elements to playing Houston in week one. Arguably the best defense in the NFL, if not second or third best. Certainly has some proven history against Josh Allen and this Bills offense. But maybe getting them in week one's not too bad of a thing. You got a ton of time to get ready. And the thing about Houston's defense is while it is elite, it is not complex. It's a pretty vanilla defense. They just execute at a high level. And so I think you know what you're going to get. Can you go out there and win one-on-ones and come up with the right play calls at the right time and move the ball and score some points? I think there's some advantages for this being in week one where you have a nice runway to get ready for the game. As you know, after week one, the Bills kick off week two on Thursday Night Football for the first ever game at the new Highmark Stadium hosting the Detroit Lions. And that's the first of 3 home games in a row. So hosting Detroit on Thursday Night Football, hosting the Chargers at 1 o'clock Eastern time, and then hosting the Patriots. Talk about some big games early in the season. Now, one thing that I do like about getting Detroit early is that they are going to have as many as 3 different starters for their offensive line with a new offensive coordinator. I think that's helpful. The Chargers, though, that's a team I was hoping to get later in the year because you want to get more of a feel for what Mike McDaniel's going to do with that offense. And now you're going to be one of the first opponents to go up against him. So I think that's a challenging time to get the Chargers. And then you get the Patriots. Obviously a huge divisional game in week 4. So you have 3 in a row at home, and then you go 2 in a row on the road out west at the Rams for Monday Night Football, and then at the Raiders for a 4:25 p.m. kick, and then your bye week comes in week 7. So this is a pretty tough opening stretch. Would you take 4-2 right now? If I told you the Bills were 4-2 after going to Houston, hosting the Lions, Chargers, and Patriots, and then going to the Rams and Raiders, would you be happy with 4-2? Something to think about. You get the 3 games in a row at home, which obviously sets up for a road-heavy slate later in the season, which we'll talk about later in this podcast. And then I'm really fascinated to see how Joe Brady chooses to manage back-to-back games out west in LA and then in Vegas. Are they going to stay out west? You see some teams do this. I don't know that there's a very straightforward, this is definitely the right thing to do, but early in the season with your bye week coming after it, I think there's a chance that staying out there might not be a bad idea. So that's the opener and the opening stretch. It's a challenging start to the season for the Bills. The next thing I want to talk about is the bye week, which comes in week 7. So after the Bills play those back-to-back games out west, they have their bye week. And obviously, we've discussed multiple times, you want that bye week to come week 10 or later. And so it comes on the early side, week 7. Now remember, Sean McDermott, who's not the head coach of the Buffalo Bills anymore, he was 9-0 after bye weeks. So Joe Brady is going to have to keep that going, right? I do like that they get Baltimore out of the bye. I think that's a good time to get Baltimore, rest advantage, a unique opponent with that backfield combination of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. I think having some time to get ready for that will be helpful. But obviously don't love that it falls earlier in the season. Now, the redeeming part of this conversation is that while your bye week does come earlier than you want it in week 7, you get those mini buys later in the season. So the Bills play on Thanksgiving and Christmas, which we'll talk more about later. But after each of those games, they get the mini bye week, which is helpful for getting some rest later in the season. And then ultimately, we hope the Bills have a bye week in the wild card round. That would be nice. I would like for the Bills to stop playing wild card games and getting guys injured and complicating the rest of the playoff push. So a week 7 bye after Vegas and before Baltimore. The last thing I want to talk about in this segment is the standalone primetime games. So the Bills have 6 primetime games and 7 standalone games. It's a healthy amount. And in terms of primetime games, the Bills have the second most in the NFL. The Rams lead the way with 7. And then the Bills are tied with the Seahawks, Packers, and Chiefs for the second most with 6. The teams that didn't get any primetime games this year, the Dolphins, the Jets, the Cardinals, the Titans, and the Raiders. And that's a pretty logical list of teams to not get a primetime game. But someone explained to me why the Giants get 4. 2 in the first 2 weeks of the season. Why? Because they got a new coach in Jackson Dart? Well, the Titans have a new coach in Cam Ward. The Raiders have a new coach in Fernando Mendoza, the number 1 pick. I don't get it. The Giants get 4 primetime games? 4. I'll leave that alone. That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So the Bills primetime games / standalone games. Week 2, as you know, Thursday Night Football, high mark opener, hosting the Lions. Then it's week 5, Monday Night Football against the Rams. That should be interesting, right? Matthew Stafford, Josh Allen, your last 2 NFL MVPs going head-to-head. That's awesome. Then week 9, Monday Night Football in Minnesota. Interesting. Brian Flores splits aggressive defense. You know, they have some players, Justin Jefferson, Christian Darrisaw. Those guys tend to be, or at least Darrisaw tends to be banged up. We'll see how that plays out, but that's an interesting primetime game. That wasn't one that I was targeting for a primetime matchup. Then Thursday night, Thanksgiving, the Bills host the Chiefs. Allen versus Mahomes. It's gone well for the Bills in the regular season. Mahomes is 1-5 in his career against the Bills in the regular season. And while I don't love the Bills playing on Thanksgiving or Christmas, if it has to be done, give me the late game. So the Bills get the 8:20 Thursday Night Football kick at home on Thanksgiving night against the Chiefs. Then week 14 in Green Bay for Sunday Night Football. That one was always going to be a primetime spotlight game. Bills have only played in Green Bay, I think, like 8 times ever. So it'll be exciting to see that on the big stage. Jordan Love's a great young quarterback. Then the Bills host the Bears in week 15 on Saturday night. And then week 16, this is not technically a primetime game, but the Bills have a standalone game in Denver on Christmas, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time kickoff there. And so the Bills play on both Thanksgiving and Christmas. And maybe that's my fault because I talked about how I didn't want them to do that, but it worked the last 2 years. The Bills avoided Christmas and Thanksgiving, but not this year. The Bills get both. And so, like I said, on Thanksgiving, I'm happy that it's the late game. And I guess with Christmas, at least it's not the first game of the day. So I'm excited and happy for people who are excited for those games, but obviously not my first choice. So in terms of primetime games, the Bills get 3 home primetime games, 3 away. The home primetime games against the Lions, Chiefs, and Bears. The away primetime games against the Rams, Vikings, and Packers. All pretty unique opponents there. I mean, obviously the Chiefs, the Bills play all the time, but your primetime games include 5 NFC opponents. Like, it's kind of crazy, right? 5. Literally all of your NFC games, all of them are primetime games, which is unique. All right, coming up next, I want to get into the rest advantages and rest disadvantages, and that actually stacks up pretty good for the Bills. We'll break it down next. Folks, be sure to stick with me. The 2026 NFL schedule release is here, and now you can trade every game on Kalshi. Schedule release always sparks debates. Who's overrated? Who got a brutal stretch? And which teams are actually playoff contenders? Kalshi lets you trade on those predictions in a live market, from total wins to playoff chances and championship futures. On Kalshi, you can trade on real NFL questions like whether a team makes the playoffs or reaches a certain win total. As the season outlook changes, you can buy in or out of your positions live, and it's available in all 50 states, so it's easy to jump in and follow along the season. For example, if you think a team's schedule is set up perfectly for a playoff run, you can actually trade on that prediction before the season even starts. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position, trade the draft pick, the game, and more on Kalshi. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade 10. Kalshi, Kalshi, trade on anything. All right, welcome back, folks. We're breaking down this Buffalo Bills 2026 schedule. Now I want to talk about rest advantages and rest disadvantages, and it actually stacks up pretty well for the Bills. In terms of rest disadvantages, the Bills only have 2 games where they have a disadvantage in terms of rest. And I went through this, and I think I got all of this correct, but there's a chance that I could have overlooked, something, but I think I'm correct on this. So only 2 rest disadvantages. Week 7, the Bills have a rest disadvantage when they go to Vegas to play the Raiders, because the Bills play Monday Night Football versus the Rams in week 6. The Raiders are playing in New England on Sunday, so the Raiders will have an extra day of rest. I do like that they are in Massachusetts and then back home for the rest advantage against the Bills. The other time is week 10 at the Jets. The Bills play Monday Night Football in Minnesota. The week prior, the Jets are playing Sunday in Kansas City, so they get 1 extra day of rest ahead of hosting the Bills in week 10. Now, the Bills have rest advantages 5 times. The first one comes in week 3 against the Chargers. The Bills, of course, play Thursday Night Football against Detroit. And then the Chargers are home on Sunday against Vegas before coming to Buffalo, where the Bills will have a notable rest advantage. Then the Bills in week 8, they have a rest advantage over Baltimore because the Bills are coming off of their bye in week 7. The Ravens play on Sunday the week prior. Week 13, the Bills have a rest advantage over the Patriots. The Bills play Thursday on Thanksgiving in week 12 over Kansas City. And then New England is playing Sunday Night Football against the Chargers. So the Bills will have the rest advantage when they go to New England. The Bills will have a rest advantage when they go to Denver. The Bills play Saturday against the Bears. The Broncos play Sunday in Vegas. And then in week 16, the Bills go to Denver with a rest advantage. And then lastly, week 17 at Miami. The Bills play Denver on Friday, which is Christmas. The Dolphins play Sunday against the Chargers. And then in week 17, they play Sunday in Miami. So 5 times the Bills have a rest advantage, including games against the Chargers, Ravens, Patriots, and Broncos. So I like that. The Bills play no teams off of their bye week. And the only 2 teams that have rest advantages over the Bills, it's one day, and it's the Raiders and Jets. So the rest advantages and disadvantages, I think, skews very, very favorably to the Buffalo Bills. Let's talk weather games. There's no heat games this year. The Bills play only in Miami as the possibility of a heat game, and that game happens on January 3rd. So I'm sure it'll be a balmy, 75, maybe 80 degrees in Miami, but no threat of that, those September 1 o'clock kicks in Miami where they bake you in the sun. So no hot weather games for the Bills to be concerned about. Plenty of cold weather opportunities. So week 12 and on, so that's November 22nd. So November 22nd through January 10th, the Bills have 4 home games, the Dolphins, Chiefs, Bears, and Jets. So obviously you have weather potential there. And their road games are in New England, in Green Bay, in Denver, and then in Miami. So 7 of those 8 games have a chance to be interesting with the cold, whether that's just cold temperatures, snow. A lot of opportunities this year for some snow games for the Bills. Literally 7 of the 8 games on or after November 22nd could be interesting with cold. All right, let's talk about the home and away distribution. The AFC this year gets 8 home games and 9 away games. So it's already, skewed towards the away games. But then the distribution here is kind of goofy for the Bills. They have 3 of the first 4 at home, but it's 3 in a row. So after they go to Houston, it's 3 in a row at home. Then after that, it's 4 of 5 on the road. Now you get the bye week in there, that helps, but that's a lot of road games. And so you have your bye week, you host the Ravens. But then after that, you have 6 of 9 on the road before closing at home against the Jets. So you have some big stretches of being on the road a ton. So I don't love that. When it comes to the 1 p.m. kickoffs, only 7 of them this year. Week 1 at Houston, week 3 hosting the Chargers, week 4 hosting the Patriots. I'm a little surprised that Patriots game in Buffalo is just a 1 o'clock kick. Not even like a 4:25 CBS, Nance and Romo game. It's a 1 o'clock kick. The Ravens in week 8, that's a 1 o'clock kick. Surprises me. At the Jets, and then the 2 against the Dolphins are all 1 o'clock kicks. So you'd expect Jets, Dolphins, no surprise there, but Houston, the Chargers, the Patriots, the Ravens, I think you can make a case for those all being at least 4:25 kicks, but they're part of the 1 p.m. slate. I like to always point out the rookie and young quarterbacks that the Bills will face, and there's not many. If Fernando Mendoza, the number 1 pick, is starting in week 6, which it doesn't feel like that's going to be the case, that's it. Like, that would be the only real chance. I don't think Ty Simpson with the Rams is going to be playing over Matthew Stafford unless he's hurt. So not really a good chance to play rookie quarterbacks this year. In terms of young quarterbacks, there's some maybes there. Week 9 in Minnesota, is J.J. McCarthy going to be starting or Kyler Murray? Probably Kyler Murray. You have Malik Willis. I mean, he's entering his 5th season, but his first year as a starter. With Miami, you get the Dolphins in week 11 and week 17. And then Caleb Williams, who's entering his 3rd season, dynamic young player for the Bears, you get him in week 15. But other than that, it's really familiar quarterbacks, high-paid quarterbacks. I mean, you get Bo Nix and C.J. Stroud, but those are regular players that the Bills have faced a decent amount over the last couple of seasons. So you're not staring at a schedule that includes many at all of those young, unproven quarterbacks. Going to have to go through all the veterans. All right, coming up next, I want to go through this schedule through the lens of where the Bills can make runs and stack some wins. We'll also talk about the preseason slate, the closing stretch, and then things I wish were different and things I love about this schedule. So, folks, be sure to stick with me. The NBA playoffs are here and every possession matters. If you're looking to get even closer to the action, FanDuel has a great offer to get you started. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's right. Turn $5 into $150 in bonus bets just for getting started. I like using FanDuel during the playoffs because everything I need is right there in one place. You can check stats, trends, and matchups before making your picks, which makes the whole experience feel a lot more informed. And whether you're looking at player props or just following a few of your favorite stars, it adds another level of excitement to every game. It's really easy to navigate the app, and it makes playoff basketball even more engaging from start to finish. Of course, the NHL playoffs are going on, Major League Baseball, so many great things to check out over at FanDuel. So head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. If you've ever opened your bank account and thought, where did all my money go? You're not alone. Keeping track of subscriptions, spending, and bills can get overwhelming fast. That's where Rocket Money comes in, helping you take control of your finances all in one place. Rocket Money automatically categorizes your spending so you can actually see where your money is going, and you can set budgets, get alerts, and stay on top of your upcoming bills. It just makes everything feel more organized and gives you a clearer picture of your finances day to day. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can actually grow your savings. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, folks, welcome back. Where can the Bills make runs, stack wins, right? That's what we're looking to do. I think there's a couple of opportunities. The first one is kind of tough, but you do get 3 home games in a row, weeks 2, 3, and 4. Lions, Chargers, Patriots, obviously 3 good teams, but 3 in a row at home. First 3 games at the new stadium. You'd like to think you could maybe stack 3 in a row there. Then this stretch where I think you really have the opportunity to win a bunch of games, weeks 6 through 11. You get the Raiders, the Ravens, the Vikings, Jets, Dolphins. I mean, hopefully you can win all 5 of those. You get the Ravens. Your toughest game is against Baltimore, and it's at home after your bye week. Go win 5 in a row right there. And then after that, it's the Chiefs. It's in Buffalo. Could you win 6 in a row? That'd be huge. But I think the defining stretch of this season, there's 2 defining stretches that I think how the Bills fare in these stretches will define what record the Bills ultimately have. The opening slate, where you play the Texans, Lions, Chargers, Patriots, and Rams. I mean, that's 4 out of 5 playoff teams, and the one team that didn't make the playoffs is the Lions, who were the number 1 seed in 2024. And they're loaded with talent, right? That's a tough stretch. And then you have this stretch, weeks 12 through 16, where you host the Chiefs, you go to New England, to the Packers, you host the Bears, and you go to the Broncos. I mean, that's a tough stretch. That's a very tough stretch. Late in the season, too. So how the Bills do in those 2 stretches, I think, will define the season. The closing stretch of games, the last 4, so you obviously you go through this whole season, and then you get towards the end, and you're talking very heavily about playoff positioning. Those last 4 games for the Bills, they host the Bears, they go to Denver, to Miami, and then they host the Jets to close out the season. And I think that's pretty favorable. I mean, obviously the Bears and Broncos are tough games, but if you're in a position where you got to win the last two and it's the Dolphins and Jets, you feel pretty good about that. You feel pretty decent about that. It's interesting. The Bills are done with New England in week 13. The preseason games this year, the first one is against the Carolina Panthers. That's in Buffalo. Then they go to Cleveland. There's been some reports, and I think actually either Brady or Beane confirmed it, that the Bills are doing joint practices with the Browns, and then they're going to have the preseason game. And then the Bills host Pittsburgh to close out the preseason. So Carolina, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. I like those. Those are good preseason opponents. I think all three of those teams have like a lot of young players that are going to be interesting to kind of watch. You got a couple of new coaches there in Cleveland and Pittsburgh. I think it's a good slate of teams to get yourself ready to go against. All right, so let's close by asking two questions here. One is things I wish were different, and then things I love. Things I wish were different about this schedule, I would say I want more home games later in the season. As we talked about, 4 of the last 6 are on the road. You have a stretch of 6 of 9 on the road. I want more home games later. I know it's a little bit tricky when you have only 8 home games versus 9 road, but I wish there were more home games later. I wish the bye week were later, of course. I wish the Bills did not play on Thanksgiving or Christmas, but I am, like I said, look, don't feel bad for me. I'm happy for everyone who's excited about those games. It does absolutely complicate my plans with 2 young kids and lots of family activities. But I'm excited for those of you who are excited about those games and want to go to them, or, maybe holidays are difficult for you and you will love having the distraction of the Bills on those days. So I am very happy for you. I wish that the opening stretch was different. It's a very demanding stretch. You have to be ready to roll. Like we talked about, it's 5 2025 playoff teams and the Lions to start things off. And so, Jim Leonard, get your defense ready to go, brother. They're going to have to play well from the outset. And the offense has to be humming, which we should expect it to. It's a lot of continuity, and you added DJ Moore. So let's go. And then, I guess the other side of that is you have this demanding opening stretch, but then after that, you have 6 in a row against non-2025 playoff teams. So would have been nice to get a couple of those swapped in for, some of these other opponents, but that's just not how it played out. I also think it's weird. I'm not sure this is a major problem, but the Bills only play 1 division game in the first 9 weeks of the season, and then 5 of their last 9 are division games. Like I said, they're done with the Patriots in week 13. And so I think the distribution of the division games kind of weird this year. Things I love about this schedule, no heat games, right? Don't have to worry about that. I like closing against the Dolphins and Jets in case you need to stack a couple of wins for playoff positioning. I like the 2 mini bye weeks that come late in the season, post-Thanksgiving and post-Christmas. I like getting Baltimore out of the bye. That's helpful. I like that the Bills are playing no teams off of their bye weeks. I like that the Bills only have 2 games with a rest disadvantage. And of course, it's only 1 day, and it's the Jets and Raiders. And I like getting 5 games with rest advantages, including games against the Chargers, Ravens, Patriots, and Broncos. So look, we knew the opponents were tough this year. It's all a rotation. It's not like the NFL woke up and said, we'll make the Bills play these teams. There's a rotation to it. And so, that's part of it. It's a challenging path, but ultimately, who knows? The Chiefs picked in the top 10. The Ravens missed the playoffs. Who really knows how good these teams are going to be? The Lions finished in last place in their division. Who knows? On paper, it's a tough schedule. But as Joe Brady says, put the ball down. Interestingly enough, the Bills are scheduled to play a game on every day of the week except for Tuesday and Wednesday. They play Sunday, Monday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So the rhythm of the Bills playing on Sunday, well, that's not a thing. That's not what's happening with this Josh Allen Buffalo Bills football team. It's a privilege to have that, and I'm very excited to talk through this coming season with you and go on this journey. And now we know the order of the games, and hopefully you can get to some of these games and take in some live football, and we can have a lot of fun here in 2026. So there you have it. My reaction to the schedule. I hope you found this to be a helpful discussion, kind of looking at the schedule through the different angles that I like to look at it through. And it really kind of puts that path in front of us that will obviously define what happens in 2026. So there you have it, folks. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you'll come on back. I'd love it if you took a second to rate, review, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.